All right, so what did I learn during my capstone project? Um, well, whew, I learned that dynamic forms, not as hard as I originally was thought that they would when I realized I needed one for this and my equipment page. I also learned using the jQuery, although I feel like this should be buttons. Um, the dynamic way of creating the elements here, and then basically the name items themselves become arrays. And then I sort of loop through each thing and put it through on the controller. I also learned that JS Fiddle when trying to make sure that everything works the way I want it to work. For example, this is basically how I figured out how to do my several forms over on this page. Now, again, there were 6 forms here, 2 of which are hidden. And let's take a look here. Things I wish I would have done, maybe it might be another way, is learning from my mistakes. The database and how that is set up. I sort of used linking tables, not as linking tables, but more as to storing quantity. And it is rather, I don't like how that's set up. I had an in-depth conversation with other tutors about specifically how it could be done on one table without having a massive amount of empty tables, essentially, and sort of looping through each one. Essentially be like my inventory table for equipment, but involving also armor and weapons and technically spells, but I would have to loop through each one. Would be a messy way to sort of just cut down the amount of tables, but I think it might involve, it was, yeah, what I have works. I'm not entirely fond of it. I also have learned CodeIgniter and MVC. This is a model view controller application. You probably got that from my first video when I mentioned there's over 1,700 lines of code in my controller. Some of it was really rather easy to copy and paste, some of it wasn't. Now, one thing I want to also call out in the name of academic honesty. This profile summary, the login page, and sort of the logout, the registration, that user, that model and the controller, model and controller, that is not stuff I wrote. The reason I feel that I can do that is because a lot of what I will do in the field is we'll have to work with other people's code. And so I did borrow from that, just also, it was part of me not being entirely sure of safety, and I'd rather rely on someone else's expertise to sort of set that up. But in that route, I do feel that working with others people's code and making it work to what you also need to be able to do is an important skill as a web developer. In fact, ITC 250 and 260, we had to work with a lot of code that was not ours, or with other not ours, or other people's code on our team, or even just from people's code from previous quarters. Now, jQuery, I've learned really makes me wish that script class would focus more on jQuery and events and manipulating the DOM, Googling in regards to everything. I also learned that I have a love-hate relationship with Bootstrap. I like everything it's done for me. I don't like that it makes it harder for me to control elements. Character sheets. Also, the sessions, actually here working with the CodeIgniter framework, calling items from the session, which I do just to make sure that there's security. In fact, the spells page, the equipment, the armor, and the edit character sheet are all coded to make sure that the person who is on that page or trying to access that page for a character, that is essentially, excuse me, that is made sure that it's checking who checking the creator of the character is to who logged in. And if it's not the same person, they actually get routed back to their profile. Just in case someone accidentally misses typing up here in the URL, because some of my things, this right here actually is the character. If there's a second URL segment that is involving an item, some equipment, something that's not character related that we're trying to correlate in, which is something I incorporated towards the end of this project. Let's see here, what else have I learned? NBC design, granted you covered that in, it makes a lot more sense now, but I did find, we even covered it in ITC 260. But it was still rather sort of a confusing beast for me. And I found this YouTube clip, not clip, but this guy does a lot of CodeIgniter videos. And he went in on the model view controller. And so I watched that about 3 or 4 times, and then it started to make sense. And so, as you can see, I have an entire application that works. And I believe I'm going to leave it at that. So I've sort of covered things I've learned, things I wish I had done differently. I really wish that I would have also been sort of styling as I go instead of using a bootstrap here towards the end, only to discover making my own magic happen couldn't. Yeah, so otherwise, that is it. Thank you.